Vote. The yeas are 50. The nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
So I'm sure you all know by now the Senate has passed the big, beautiful bill, their version of it, 51-50, with J.D. Vance being the tie-breaking vote. Now, it will go back to the House. There's some people saying it might not pass the House, and they're going to have to readjust things again. I'm not sure about that. I feel like if they passed it the first time, they should have no issue passing it this time. But there's been a lot of confusion on what's actually in this bill, a lot of misleading info, mainly from the left. Now, to be completely upfront, there are a few things I don't like about this bill either, but I think overall this bill will be beneficial to Americans, especially lower and middle income Americans, and just the overall country in general. Now, there needs to be better things to help with it going forward, like more government spending cuts, this and that. But I'm just going to go into all the details that are in the bill since people are not 100% sure what's in it. So before I dive in, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what you guys think of this big, beautiful bill. So let's dive into it. So this is from The Guardian. What is in it in general? So the biggest thing is it's making Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent, which is an absolutely great thing. So they like to say, like they even say it right here, that they benefited higher earners. This is very untrue. This helped the lower middle class a lot by you're getting taxed less on your income. It also increased the child tax credit and it increased the standard deduction. So it means more in your tax return. This is huge. So it makes this, it was set to expire at the end of this year. This makes it permanent. So the standard deduction, $1,000 for individuals. Also, the child tax credit went from $1,000 to $2,000. It went up again in this bill, so I'll get into that. And your income tax will stay lower instead of going back up to what it was before 2017. Very good thing to have. Cutting tax on tips and overtime. So these are not, it's kind of misleading here. So it's not like when you work an overtime paycheck, you'll have no taxes come out in that paycheck. It's more of like a write-off at the end of the year, so you can claim it on your taxes. So say you work so many hours during the year where you made $2,000 like just in overtime pay, you can claim that and get that money back. So it's a little misleading, and it's the same thing with the tax on tips. So they're basically write-offs, and they do have caps on them, unfortunately. So I think in the House bill and the Senate bill, the tax for tips was $25,000, so it's still fairly high. So once after that, then you have to pay. And then when it comes to the overtime, there was originally no cap with the House, and now there's a cap on $12,000 of overtime pay earned. So not $12,000 just money earned, $12,000 of overtime pay earned. So depending on what kind of job you have, like if you're like a cop or a doctor, nurse, something like that, where you're working a job where you're working a lot of overtime, this will benefit you some, but it won't be as beneficial as it could have been. If you're someone, say like a warehouse worker, construction worker, where your work pay might be a little lower, but you're working a lot of overtime, this will still benefit you tremendously. So a few misleading things there. Also, for people age 65 and over are eligible for an additional $6,000 in deduction. So he wanted to do no tax on Social Security. So I think this is kind of like making up for that. I think they're still getting taxed on Social Security, but this will basically negate it. From my understanding. So, and a big thing too is all these incentives expire at the end of 2028. So if, you know, a Republican doesn't get in 2028, like J.D. Vance or whoever else may be running, these probably aren't coming back. These could be temporary. So just keep this in mind when you're voting going forward if you do depend on these things. Money for mass deportations and a border wall. Great thing, fully support. So it says ICE will receive $45 billion for detention facilities, $14 billion for deportation operations, and billions of dollars to hire an additional 10,000 new agents by 2029. More than $50 billion is allocated for the construction of new border fortifications and will probably include a wall along Mexico. So more than likely, the wall will continue to get built after it was paused under the Biden administration. We've already seen how effective the border can be actually secured since Trump took office. I think May, they had, 10,000 encounters, but no one was released into the country. Huge difference versus Biden. I think last year let in like 150,000, and that's what the border encounters, and then let in thousands into the country. Huge difference. So it's fully secure. And obviously, ICE needs to keep going after all the illegal migrants that are still scattered throughout our country that were flown in everywhere. They've been doing a good job of it, and this will help them keep going and get them out. And it's a great, like, you're going to hear people on the left say, oh, who's going to work these jobs? There was literally just I want to say it was Ohio, a butcher, I believe it was, that had like 70 people got arrested by ICE. The very next day, there was a line of people applying for that job, Americans applying for that job. So they could have been hired there the whole time. But the companies chose to hire cheaper labor. And this keeps labor cheaper throughout everywhere. Like, I don't think people realize that. The same people that say, oh, we need higher wages are the same people that say we need to keep these Hispanics here making $5 an hour. Like, it makes no sense. So getting all these people out will open up more jobs for Americans, and it'll be more competitive, and wages will go up alongside it. And just for the record, Joe Biden said that same thing in 2007 when he was running for president. So he used to believe that. Next one, slashing Medicaid and food stamps. So another thing that's been kind of misleading, misrepresented, a number that's been thrown out is saying that this cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid. So it's $1 trillion over a 10-year period. So it's about $100 billion a year, which is much needed because we spend about $1 trillion on it every year. We need to cut back on this. This is one of the biggest things that contributes to our debt. And a big thing that I absolutely love about this is there are new work requirements. So the work requirements are said to be, I believe, more than 80 hours a month, which is not bad. 80 hours a month is 20 hours a week. So these people, and this doesn't apply to everyone. So it applies to, like, basically if you're working age 19 to 64, you have no disabilities, no mental disabilities, and you're childless, or your kids are 14 years or older, then you need to hit these work requirements. Older people don't, kids don't, if you have young kids, you don't need to hit these. And this applies to, I just had it up. I'm sorry. Where was it at? I literally just looked this up right before this video. So it applied to about like 16 million people. 16 million people on Medicaid fall into this category, and only about 7 million of them are actually working over 20 hours a week. So 9 million are not. So they actually throw this number out too, where they say an estimated, that the Guardian actually, not being biased here, the left-leaning Center of Budget Policy and Priorities. So that's interesting. So estimates that Medicaid could cost as many as 10.6 million people off their health care. So yeah, I just said 9 million don't even hit this work requirement. So yeah, if they choose, and this doesn't kick in until I think the end of 2026. If they choose just to continue not working, they have a year and a half to find a better job. If they continue not to work, then yeah, they'll get kicked off. You need to contribute something to society. You don't get to just sit there and just exist and get everything handed to you. And this applies to SNAP as well. So there's work requirements for food stamps too, to be able to receive those. Fully support that too. People need to stop leeching off the government and contribute to society. And what will be great too is if these people end up working more and more hours to where they just get insurance through their private companies, like private insurance. So what that can do is if you have more and more people using private insurance, that can create competitiveness in that industry, which could bring down prices if they're bringing in more money. So that could bring down prices for payments, which is good for people. And then it'll be less people on Medicaid. So there'll be less government spending for that. This could be a win-win, but it needs to happen. Like, this is something that's needed to happen for a long time. Cuts to green energy. This bill will phase out many tax incentives created by Congress during Joe Biden's presidency meant to encourage consumers and businesses to use electric cars, blah, blah, blah. So basically the 7,500 electric car tax credit's going, a lot of subsidies for like solar panels, and any kind of green energy is going from the bill, any kind of tax write-off you could have. One thing I heard, I don't know if they changed this, but I heard Thomas Massey talk about this. He said that in the bill, the tax write-off only applies to people like me and you, like just regular everyday people. It does not apply to companies. So apparently companies can still have that tax write-off, which I don't agree with. I think if you're going to go full on getting rid of the green energy, you need to get rid of it for the companies too. Like, you can't just keep it for the companies and give them a little, oh yeah, you can have it, and then it'd say no to everyone else. So that's one thing I have an issue with. I don't know if they changed it. I hope they changed it, but I guess we'll see going forward. This is one probably one of my least favorite parts of this bill that I wish didn't change. The state and local tax relief, or called SALT. So for those of you who don't know, the state and local tax deduction is a deduction you can take if you're not using the standard deduction, you're using itemized. So it usually applies to more wealthier people. And it basically, if you're living like New York and you're getting pounded with state income taxes, state property taxes, anything like that, you can use those and deduct it from your federal taxes. So basically your federal taxes subsidize you because you live in a state where you have high state taxes. So basically the states win more than any. These states that tax the crap out of their citizens win more than anything. So they just can keep throwing more and more taxes, and big buddy federal government will come save the day and keep these people living in that state. So what happened was, before Trump's 2017 tax bill, there was no limit on this at all. So people could, if someone owned 5 houses, they could do it to all 5 houses. And this was a big win for people that have more money, that live in California and New York. So they capped this at $10,000. So this is a huge win, and this is a huge, basically, attack on the rich, which the left is always trying to say they want to do. This is a huge thing that they did, and I fully support it. So they raised it from $10,000 to $40,000. So there's still a cap, but I think it's ridiculous. And it was more Republicans that live in blue states fighting for this because they want to show that, oh, we're fighting for you guys by giving you more federal money. I think it's ridiculous that they would fight for that. I think that's wrong, and that's probably my biggest issue with this bill. That's the issue. So raising the debt ceiling is another thing I'm not a fan of. So they're saying this will raise the debt limit by $5 trillion. So basically we can get the federal debt up to $42 trillion, which is insane. Now there's still, basically their argument is they need more wiggle room before they cut more spending in case it keeps going up, because I'm sure it will keep going up. But, this never looks good. I will say the people on the left arguing this too, which I agree. I don't think they should be doing this. But this is, Joe Biden suspended the debt limit for 2 years. People forget about that. Between 2023 and 2024, the debt limit was suspended. There was no limit. So at least there's still a limit, but yeah, this is something where I'm hoping gets fixed going forward, because what they have said with this bill, it's going to, it's right here. It's going to add to the deficit. So where it says a huge price tag. So between now and 2034, this will add $3 trillion to the deficit. So about $300 billion a year. Now, it sounds bad, but this is mainly, it's not because of government spending or anything like that. It's mainly because of the tax cuts. So more of us will be keeping more money into our pockets. We'll keep money in our pockets. And so they'll be having less of a revenue, and that will cause this deficit. Now, I trust Donald Trump is going to do more government spending cuts, which there's still time for. He's already laid off a bunch of government workers. He's cut a lot of government programs. And I feel like going forward, this will show up. Like, it's hard to read how much money that's saving right this second, because a lot of the government workers that cut were on buyouts. So they're still being paid till September. So I think end of this year and starting next year, we'll really see how much federal spending has been cut. And then it'll give us an idea going forward what that looks like when it comes to the debt. So there's still this time for that. So people like Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, I understand their issues when it comes to the deficit and everything, but there's still time to cut spending. There's still plenty of time to do that. Trump's president for 4 years. He's really gotten probably a year and a half, because if they lose the House or the Senate in midterms, it'll probably be a little harder. But there is still time for government spending cuts, and it needs to happen for this debt situation to ever be fixed. And then one thing they like to say is more benefits for the rich than the poor. And this is where they're very misleading. And people like Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer, all this, have been parroting this. And it, like I said, it's very misleading. So it says, wealthier taxpayers appear set to receive more benefits from this bill than poorer ones, according to the budget lab at Yale University. Taxpayers in the lowest income quintile will see a 2.5% decrease in their incomes, largely due to the SNAP and Medicaid cuts, while the highest earners will see their incomes grow by 2.4%. So basically, what's going to happen is if people don't hit the work requirements, they will lose these benefits, and then they'll have to, I guess, pay more. So basically what happens is, this is how it's very misleading. So if you're someone working 15 hours a week, right, you're going to need to work more to stay on Medicaid, stay on food stamps. So then you're going to have to, when you work more, you're going to pay more in taxes naturally because you're working more. And then you might get to a point where you're buying your own food, or you're paying for your own health insurance. So that could potentially decrease your income, but I think it's very, very misleading. So basically what they're saying is these people that contribute nothing to society, or very little, should keep doing that and just keep leeching off the system. No, they need to contribute. And then what happens when you're working more and you're paying for all these things yourself and being a grown-up, you're going to be incentivized to find more ways to make money. Okay, you're trying to find a better job, promotion, a side hustle. You're going to look for different ways to make money, and then you're going to become wealthier in the process, rather than sitting at the bottom of the totem pole being like, well, I need someone to help me. It's so wrong. So they're very misleading when it comes to stuff like this. There's, like I said, there's 16 million people that are childless, working age, not disabled, that barely work and choose to sit at home so they can just collect Medicaid, free healthcare, and free food. And it's wrong. They need to work. If all of us need to work, if some of us, like me, like a lot of you probably watching this video, work at least 40 hours a week, we pay into Medicaid so they're able to do that, and we pay for our own private insurance, there is no reason any of these people can't do that. And that needs to be pushed. So I'm glad that stuff's being pushed in this. Like I said, the SALT tax I'm not a fan of. Debt ceiling is a little iffy. They could have cut more out of green energy. Everything else I'm pretty supportive on. I think it's a nice bill. I think it's definitely going to be better for our country going forward with a bill like this. And I think people need to stop listening to the left when it comes to how misleading they are, because that's all they're trying to do everything they can to try to say Trump is a horrible person, Trump doesn't care, Trump this and that. But literally, all these tax cuts from his first time in office helped the middle class. The child tax credit going up, which I think I forgot to include that. So that went up to $2,200 now instead of $2,000. I think it was supposed to be $25,000. I think someone negotiated $22,000. I don't know why, but it's still a lot higher than before Trump. It was $1,000. So it's still very beneficial to the middle class. Lower income taxes beneficial for middle class. Higher standard deduction beneficial for middle class. So yeah, this is a pretty good bill. Not a perfect bill. I'd probably give it like a B-. Definitely improvements that can be made. But I hope the House approves it, and I hope Trump signs it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this bill in general, and what you think going forward. If you think Trump's got some good ideas here, if you think Congress wrote the bill, what parts you like, what parts you don't like. And just make sure you like my video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.